John chapter 1, verses 1 to 18. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was turned toward God, and what God was, the Word also was. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made. What took place in him was life, and the life was the light of humankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. En arche en hologos, in the beginning was the Word. Kai hologos en proston theon, kai theos en hologos. And the Word was turned toward God, and what God was, the Word also was. The Word, the Word, the Word. We got to presume that for the author of the Gospel of John, as for us, statements about persons other than human beings, statements about persons other than human persons, non-human persons, i.e. spirits, are often based on analogies with the human. St. Thomas Aquinas says, all theology, and the Bible's all theology, theologies, all theology is analogy. And all analogy is rooted in human experience. So that means all the analogies we find in the Bible are anthropomorphic and anthropopathic analogies. Anthropomorphic, meaning like Mickey Mouse is an anthropomorphism. He's more Mickey than Mouse. Donald Duck is an anthropomorphism. He's more Donald than Duck. You get what I'm saying? He's a human being given the features of an animal, but in reality it's just a human, it's a character, it's a human character, right? It's a comedic expression. We do the same thing with God and the spirits. We make them into anthropomorphic, that we morph them into an anthropos, into a human. So they're not only analogies, all analogies are anthropomorphic. Or anthropopathic, pathos, meaning feelings, passion, right? They will, in other words, they will exhibit the emotional spectrum of a human. So all theology is analogy. That includes the Bible. And all analogy is rooted in human experience. So all theologies are anthropomorphic and anthropopathic. And therefore, cultural anthropology can add to Thomas Aquinas and say, all human experience is culturally specific. So, when we read the Bible, we're not just getting anthropomorphic analogies and anthropopathic analogies, and that's that. We're getting culturally specific Middle Eastern and Mediterranean and North African personality, anthropomorphic, anthropopathic analogies. You follow what I'm saying? In other words, the God that's presented there and the spirits that are presented there are going to be presented as if they're Middle Eastern, North African personalities. So when God gets pissed off or angry, he's going to get like a Middle Eastern, North African personality does. Quick to defend his honor. The Bible's all true. God, holy and absolute mystery, is communicating God's self to us. But the way we communicate that, the way our biblical inspired ancestors in the faith communicated that, obviously was limited by a culturally influenced vocabulary. So we can presume safely that for the author of the gospel called John, just like for us, Americans, statements about persons that are other than human, i.e. spirits, are often based on analogies with the human. And this holds notoriously true for theological statements about God. All such statements are anthropomorphic, anthropopathic analogies that are culturally specific. Thus, the Word that was turned toward God in the beginning must be something like a human word. That makes sense? The Greek term for word is logos. You see it in a lot of words, don't you? Like logic, biology. That's a logos, words or study of bios, which is animal life. You also have other ones like, sociology. That's words or study about society. Or theology. That's theos and logos. Logos, logoi, words about study of the theos, God. So Greek term for word is logos. However, logos does not mean what most schooled people mean by the term word. What do most schooled people mean by the term word? Most educated people and literate people would mean by the term word the smallest recognizable lexical item. The smallest unit of wording, whether spoken or written. A mark, sound, or sign that is meaningful, full of meaning. That can stand on its own as a label, a name for something, and be listed in a dictionary or lexicon. That's what educated people mean by word. A better understanding of logos as used by John, the way John understands it, can be found in the way non-literate persons use the term word. For non-literate people, a word is a statement, an utterance, a saying, a communication, the whole thing a person says. Everything the person says and has to say and communicate is the word. Now think about that, because that's very interesting in how you understand what is meant by the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and Jesus is the Word. It means He's everything God has to say. Do you see that? It's a complete statement. It's a saying. The whole thing a person says. Yes, Dandy.
Like, I give you my word.
The word is...
when you're
it's related to that.
allegiance.
It's related to that, but that is specifically referring to, like, I'm telling you that what I'm saying is trustworthy and true, and I put my honor and reputation on it. It's related to that, but it's different. It means everything I have to say and communicate and disclose about myself. That's the saying. That's what word means. That's what word means. That's what's being communicated here. I'm holding nothing back. This is it. To ask a non-literate individual who does not think in terms of words, sentences, and paragraphs to repeat a word often results in having that person repeat everything he or she just said. This is what is involved in the term logos here, as used in John chapter 1, verses 1 to 18. En arche en hologos. Kai hologos en proston theon, kai theos en hologos. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was turned toward God. What God was, the Word also was. The complete saying, the statement, everything I have to say. The word that was turned toward God in the beginning refers to God's total utterance that has resulted in everything created, visible and invisible. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Okay. That means creation is full of word. If you want to look for God, creation is the dance. Creation is the dance. Look close enough and you may find the dancer. What sense does it make to ascribe such a word to God? It is true that some philosophically oriented persons, elites in the Greco-Roman world of the centuries leading up to Christ and a little bit after him, people like Plato here, thought of the human person in terms of body and soul. How many people here think of the human person in terms of body and soul? Show of hand. And Plato and Aristotle and Plotinus would come in the door and go, my God, who would have thought that in the 21st century in the West, we would have disciples? That's amazing. And then you bring Jesus and Paul in. And they're like, well, it's interesting that you believe that. We never taught that, but that's okay. So it is true that very, very few people in the Mediterranean world of 2,000 years ago, philosophically inclined people, disciples of Plato and others, did think of the human person as a kind of composite of body and soul. Is that how the vast majority of Mediterranean people believed about human persons back then? Nope. Nevertheless, vast majority of ancient Mediterraneans, including the pre-Paschal Jesus, traditionally thought of the human person in terms of what anthropologists call body zones of interaction with the world around. Body zones of interaction with the world around. Humankind is Hadam, taken from the Hadamah, the ground. That's a very interesting etymology. Human existence is seen as bodily existence. Spiritual, okay, but bodily existence. If there's any hope for the human person, it should be a bodily resurrection, yes? So they see the human person primarily as three zones of interaction, physical interaction with the world around. Three body zones make up the human person, and all three body zones appear repeatedly from one end of the Bible to the other, repeatedly in the Gospels. First is the zone of emotion-fused thought, which includes will, intellect, judgment, personality, and feeling all rolled into one. This is the body zone of the activity of the eyes and the heart, which would include sight, insight, understanding, choosing, loving, thinking, sinning, valuing, and all that. Honoring and shaming. It all originates in the heart, and because these are anti-introspective people, they can't see what's in there, only God knows what's in there. The light emanates from the heart and comes out through the lanterns of the eyes. If you've got an evil light coming out of your eyes, an envious light, you can damage objects and people. That's called the maloho, the evil eye, which 80% of the people still believe, that cultural syndrome. And by the way, you and I don't agree with it, don't believe it. You give me the evil eye, who cares? It's like, okay, bye-bye. My individual American introspective science-based self. That's not part of my cultural consensual reality. But I guarantee you, you do that to 80% of the people in the world to this day. 80% of cultures in the world, people's immune systems get affected by that because they're culturally conditioned by that. They're susceptible to this cultural syndrome. They can get hurt. They can even die from the evil eye. Okay, so you've got this one body zone that is emotion-fused thought. It's the activity of the eyes and the heart. Heart, eyes. All right, we're going somewhere with this, so hold on. The second body zone is the zone of self-expressive speech, including communication, particularly that which is self-revealing, self-disclosing. This involves listening and responding. The activity of the mouth, ears, tongue, lips, throat, and teeth. This is the body zone of the mouth and the ears. It involves speaking, hearing, singing, swearing, praying. It's always oral and vocal in the Bible. Cursing, listening, eloquence, silence, crying, etc. Finally, the zone of purposeful action is the zone or body zone of external behavior or interaction with the environment. This is the activity of the hands and the feet and the fingers and the legs. This is the body zone of hands and feet, which involve the activities of walking, sitting, standing, touching, accomplishing, and so forth. So 3 body zones, that's how human beings are seen in the Bible. Dimensions of human activity will be described always in the Bible and by ancient Mediterraneans in terms of any appropriate body zone or zones, or even all 3 together. For example, to explain opposition to Jesus, John cites Isaiah to the effect that God has, quote, blinded their eyes. What body zone is that?
The heart and mind.
Eyes and heart. Emotion-fused thought. Has blinded their eyes and hardened their heart. You see that? There it is. Lest they should see with their eyes and perceive with their heart and turn from me to heal them. Here the zone of emotion-fused thought is involved, the eyes-heart body zone. Hardened hearts refers to an inability to think, perceive, and assess properly. Hard hearts are hearts that malfunction, largely due to ill will. When a biblical writer refers to all 3 body zones, we can assume comment is being made about complete human existence, a human experience. Thus we read in 1 John chapter 1, verse 1, what was from the beginning we have heard. We have heard, ears, mouth. What we have seen with our eyes, what we have looked at, that's eyes, heart. And touched with our hands concerning the word of life. In other words, we have with our entire human experience encountered the word of life, the communication from God, Jesus. This is a popular expression of total involvement. We wouldn't say that. We wouldn't say eyes, heart, ears, mouth, hands, feet touched. We would say, I've loved God with body and soul. And you find it, soul, popping up all over the Bible in translations. Probably a better translation should be life. Life. Okay? So what it's a way of saying is, I'm totally humanly involved in relationship with Jesus, with God. It's fascinating. That's why you really can't make faith in the Bible just intellectual, can you? Or emotional. It has to be an entire life of loyalty, ongoing growth. Let's pause right here.